I want to welcome the extraordinary governors who took the time to come to Chicago today. For the last week or so, I've been traveling around the country talking about what we can do to help families who are struggling in this economy, as well as the long-term agenda that I want to pursue as president to restore America's competitiveness and restore a sense of prosperity around the country. All of you as governors are dealing with these issues day in and day out. And for all the decisions that are made about these issues in Washington, you're the ones who see the effects on families who live in your states each and every day. You've seen what happens when the federal government fails to adequately regulate the mortgage industry and bails out banks on Wall Street, but doesn't do enough to help thousands of Americans who are losing their homes to foreclosure every day. You see what happens when tax breaks are going to corporations that are leaving your state, and when you don't have adequate resources to provide the health care and good schools that are so desperately needed. That's one of the reasons why we've got 29 states that are facing $48 billion in budget shortfalls. You've seen what happens when $10 billion a month is invested in Iraq, taking away money that could be used to fix roads and bridges, hospitals, schools, secure levees, and dams. You know that while fiscal irresponsibility in Washington has left our children with a lifetime of debt, you can't spend the money you don't have because you actually have to balance your budgets. So after 8 years of a president who's shown little concern for working families and little understanding of what it takes to grow our economy, you've had to innovate and take matters into your own hands, and you've done an extraordinary job. Whether it's the quick steps taken by Governors O'Malley and Strickland to deal with the problems of foreclosure in the state and help homeowners refinance, the energy-saving measures implemented by Governors Granholm and Baldacci, you've all proved that our states are still laboratories of our democracy. But with the state of our economy in such turmoil and millions of Americans struggling to make ends meet, you deserve and you need a partner in the White House, a president who understands that our prosperity doesn't come from Wall Street or Washington, but from the hard work and ingenuity and productivity of our people. And you're aware that we should be investing in the skills, the human capital, the education and well-being of your constituents. And that's exactly what I plan to do as President of the United States. I've laid out a comprehensive economic agenda over the last few weeks. I just want to highlight a few issues that I think are of particular importance to the states before we open up the discussion. To start with, I think you'd all agree that we need to pass a second round of fiscal stimulus, relief that can't wait until the next president takes office. I've called for an immediate $50 billion stimulus that would send out a second round of rebate checks to help families pay for basic necessities. But it also includes $10 billion in a home foreclosure prevention fund that would help homeowners refinance their mortgages, $10 billion to make sure that states who've been hit hardest by the housing crisis don't have to slash critical public services like healthcare, education, precisely at a time when demand may be greater. And we also think that we need to expand and extend unemployment insurance for those Americans who've lost their jobs. To create new jobs, one step that I'll take as president is to invest $60 billion in a national infrastructure reinvestment bank. All of you understand firsthand how badly our roads and our bridges, our water systems, our locks, our dams are in need of repair. You know that it's a safety and an economic issue, and you understand how many jobs this creates. That's why I believe Senator McCain's plan to pay for a gas tax holiday with transportation and infrastructure funding is an especially bad idea. It would mean less money for these important projects in your states. It would cost hundreds of thousands of jobs in your state, and at most it would save consumers pennies a day at the pump for just 3 months. I think a second rebate check makes much more of a difference and would leave our infrastructure funding in place. Another part of our economic plan that I want to talk about is energy. And I know that nobody has been spending more time on this than Governor Granholm. Obviously, Michigan has been going through very, very difficult times as the auto industry is having to absorb the shock of changing consumer habits. One of the things that I want to do is to make sure that even as we're dealing with issues of climate change, that we're generating billions of dollars that we're reinvesting in solar, wind, biodiesel, but also making sure that our auto industry here in the United States that has an impact in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, throughout the Midwest, that we're investing in the next generation of automobiles, that we're figuring out also how we can potentially create a smart electricity grid that would allow us to shift to a plug-in hybrid system for our vehicle transportation that could reduce greenhouse gases, provide jobs in the construction of such a grid, but also move us on a path of independence from foreign oil. And by the way, that is going to be the solution long-term to high gas prices. When I hear John McCain say that he is now in favor of the same oil drilling off the coast that he was opposed to just a week ago, what he doesn't tell you is that George Bush's own Energy Department has said that this would have no impact on consumers until 2030. 2030. No appreciable impact for the next 22 years, something they're not telling consumers. Imagine what we could do over the next 22 years in investing in completely transforming our transportation infrastructure. That's the kind of approach that I think all of us agree we need to take. It is finally critical that we relieve the biggest burden that so many of you are dealing with, and that's the crushing cost of health care. My plan would not only guarantee that every uninsured American could get the same kind of health care that members of Congress give themselves. It would also help to lower premiums by up to $2,500 per typical family and bring down costs for the entire country by making our health care system more efficient through better technology and more emphasis on prevention. We'd also help families with college tuition. I know that's something that all of you are trying to deal with, making sure that young people in your states can get access to a college education. Given the strains on state budgets, it's becoming more and more difficult to provide that support. We now have, again, because of lax regulation, a lot of financial aid programs that are becoming weaker. Some are actually pulling out of the state or refusing to provide assistance to certain categories of students, including community college students. We want to provide a $4,000 tuition credit every student every year in exchange for national or community service. Finally, I want to just point out that I'd like to reform our tax code in a way that's decidedly different from John McCain, and I would have an enormous impact on families in your state. John McCain has decided that he wants to double down on the Bush tax cuts by providing another $300 billion in tax cuts, not paid for. 25% of the benefits of this tax cut would go to people making $2.8 million a year. 25% would go to people making more than $2.8 million a year. In contrast, what I want to do is provide a tax cut, $1,000 per family, going to middle-class folks typically making $100,000 a year or less. That's going to put money in people's pockets. That's what's going to boost the economy. That's what's going to strengthen families in your states. In the end, what you need, I believe, is a partner in Washington that understands your people, understands the hopes and dreams of the American people, and is not expected to solve every one of their problems, but is willing to give them the tools they need to succeed and prosper and live out the American dream. That's what all of you have been doing as governors. One of the things that I said last night during our dinner is that I've always been struck by the essential common sense and pragmatism of governors in comparison to some of the stuff that goes on in Washington. You've got to solve problems. Ultimately, the buck stops with you. You've got to balance your budget. If you've got a badly drafted piece of legislation, you're the ones who have to live with it. And as a consequence, you end up spending less time posturing and trying to score ideological points and more time trying to govern. We need that same attitude and that same approach in Washington, and so I'm very much looking forward to not only this discussion, but I'm looking forward to being a partner with you in the years to come to make sure that we strengthen America.